All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Fiver plus some. Talking to my good friend Trevor McQuain,
Yep,
right? Did I pronounce it right?
you
Sweet.
pronounced it right. Yeah, it's a weird one. So,
Oh, it's all right. I'm terrible. Um, so Trevor is one of my good friends. He's one of my coworkers. I've been on lockdown. Today is day 31. I have missed hanging out with all of my friends at Mountain Crest. Mountain Crest is the inpatient mental health hospital here in town. We're going to kind of chat about what's going on with the pandemic, how he's handling it, because he's one of the few people that actually wants to talk to me, who, who is an essential worker. So, uh, who gets to go into work, but he also has a small child. So we need to talk about that because I'm fascinated about that. Um, Trevor, uh, so first off, uh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
uh, so I'm Trevor. I'm sixth generation Fort Collins person. So I was actually born in San Diego because my dad was in the Navy, but literally my family founded part of Fort Collins. So we've been here forever. I went to Poudre High School back when Poudre had a rodeo team. So back in the dark ages when Poudre still had a rodeo team, I went there. Um, and then I'm basically a giant geek. So Star Wars, like I met my wife. One of our first real dates was episode 2, and of course I went in costume. So
Of
you know,
course.
of course, right? So I'm like geek factor 5 level geek. So uh, Star Wars, Robotech, wargaming, stuff like that. I'm big time geek person. So
So you have an LPC.
yep, I'm LPC.
Okay. Why don't you let people know what an LPC is?
So LPC is a licensed professional counselor. So it means you have at least a master's degree in some sort of counseling. So it's usually psychology, but it can be some other things. We're slightly different than social work. Social work's more concentrated on like systems in the community, while LPCs are more individual counseling, and we do a lot more, talk therapy stuff. Um, yeah, I got my LPC. God, that's 2007. So I've been in LPC for way too long. And I went to University of Colorado, Denver, down right next to the Pepsi
Oh,
Center, downtown Denver. That's where I went to grad
mhm.
school.
Well, good for you. I'm an LPC too.
Yeah,
Not a lot of people know about the
yeah,
LPCs.
no, yeah. No, most people don't
Everyone
know the
thinks
difference.
about the licensed social work stuff, and they don't know the difference. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's very clinical.
right.
It's like we didn't want to get a PhD in psychology.
Yeah, or yeah. I mean, our my last intern's her master of social work was 28 credits. I'm like, my LPC was 60 credits. We
Yeah.
have a lot more clinical training than a social worker does. So
Oh, by far. I remember supervising a social worker. I was like, so here are how you do all the things. And they're like, we did not learn about that. Fair enough.
yeah.
Um, so you work inpatient
Hmm.
um, in an inpatient mental health hospital. Um, First off, what does that look like? Secondly, how did you end up there? Because not a lot of people, even with an LPC, end up working in an inpatient setting.
Right. So inpatient is the weirdest. It's the hardest thing to explain to somebody because basically, imagine somebody has like a breakdown, their girlfriend leaves them, whatever, and they end up crying, and bad enough they end up going to the emergency room. This is where they end up going, is to an inpatient psych hospital. Most people are just had an emotional breakdown, something like that, but also they really sick people that you don't think about. So people with schizophrenia, people with bipolar, all those sort of people end up in inpatient psychiatric care for, in the movies, it's, oh, they're there for 2 months and they get all, no, it's not. It's like 3, 4, 5 days. We're stabilize you, get you out of the hospital. We're like emergency room, or even like just a regular hospital for somebody. Oh, I broke my leg. You don't stay in the hospital for 2 months. You stay in the hospital long enough to get out.
Right.
So, so how I got this job is kind of weird, but I graduated in 2003. So if you remember 2003, that was the Bush recession. So basically Bush got elected in 2000, and like always, every Republican tanks the economy after about 3 years. So they just extended unemployment because of, everyone's unemployment ran out and all this stuff. So I couldn't find a job to save my life. I was working overnight stocking shelves in Walmart. And my aunt, who's a psychiatric nurse practitioner, she's like, why don't you come to the hospital and work with me? And I said, could I do that? She's like, yeah, you wouldn't be able to be a counselor because you don't have your license, but you could come work. So she got me a job. She got me an interview with her boss, and I started working on the floor. And I met all of the care coordinators because I'm like, I have a license. I want to get my license. How do I do that? So Danny and Betty basically took me under their wing and said, okay, let's figure out how to do this.
So Danny Shearer.
Yeah.
And Betty Vale?
Betty Vale, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so they were instrumental in me figuring out how to get my license. Because back then there wasn't a provisional license. You graduated. Yeah, you graduate and you're screwed, basically. It's like, well, you can't have a job because you don't have your license. So no insurance is going to pay you to do therapy. But you have to have 2,000 hours of doing therapy to get your license. So it was this weird thing. Huh. So I got a job there. I was an extern. So once a week I worked a day for free in care coordination so I could get hours for my license. And then eventually I went to North Range, and I was there for like 5 years, but I still was friends with Danny and Betty and everybody. And when the position opened up, I just came back to Mountain Crest.
So North Range is the community mental health center out in Weld County. Mountain Crest is in Larimer County. So you kind of moved back and forth between those two.
Yeah, because Claire was in grad school, so I never actually lived in Greeley, but I would commute, and then since basically I was the one that knew kind of all this stuff on the Front Range, they'd end up sending me to Firestone or to places like that, so I'd go all over kind of the county doing things.
Gotcha. So Claire is your wife.
Yeah.
And what is she doing?
She is the manager for safety and risk management for the city of Fort Collins. So,
wow.
Yeah. So her job is basically making sure employees for the city are safe. So like making sure they have hard hats, making sure that stuff, writing the policies so people don't, just start digging in your front yard and destroy your sewer system, stuff like that. And then risk management, this is the first risk management job she has. What they do is they look at a situation, make sure the city has coverage and insurance for it, so that if something happens, the city doesn't go bankrupt, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's fascinating because she is on a very different side of this COVID thing than I'm on. I'm like, oh, someone's sick, or someone's stressed out about it. And she's like, if the city does this, the city could be liable and we could lose a lot of money. Or how do I keep my employees safe when they have to go into someone's house to fix their water? Stuff like that. So it's very interesting to see the different side of it.
Oh, that's super fascinating because like no one thinks about like all the different moving pieces on all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So Trevor, you're an essential worker. You and I have worked for years together.
Yeah.
Gosh. Probably since 2012, maybe?
Yeah. 7, 8
years. I
years.
worked for Summit Stone, but then I moved into working for UC Health. But yeah, we've worked for years together.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I feel very guilty that I had a health scare, and our boss said that I could work from home. I feel super guilty about that. But being an essential worker that doesn't get a whole lot of like press and stuff like that, but being an essential worker, you go to the office. What has
Yep.
changed for you at both home and while you're at work at quarantine? Because when I left, just so everyone knows, when I left, it was before everything was mandated. But Don was like, you were sick. You need to wear a 95 mask. You need to work from home. Go home right now. You're going to work from home. And so it's been 31 days now.
Yeah.
So what does it look for you like for you guys?
Well, so the first couple, like the first week or so was really weird because like, okay, so a psych hospital, most people think of a hospital, you have your own room and private room, all this stuff. Psych hospitals almost always, there are two people in a room. And that's by design because you don't want anyone to be able to isolate and hurt themselves, or just, you want people interacting with other humans. That's how you're going to heal from that. So we had that initially. Everyone's like, is this okay? Because they're, in the same room. So they're usually within 6 feet of each other. And so we had this big hubbub, and they're like, okay, everyone's got to be single room. So we had to, basically put the hospital all down to a single room. So we're at like 2/3 capacity. So instead of having 38 people, our max, I think, is 24.
Right.
So that just, it changes things. And then we're like, well, patient's day is group after group. A patient has 5 or 6 therapy groups in a day, and we couldn't do that. So the group therapists have to, we had to separate all the rooms and measure to make sure all the chairs are 6 feet apart. And there's only so many you can have in the room. So
how did you manage to figure out 6 feet apart? Did you actually take like?
I'm assuming Denny came in and tape measured everything because the chairs aren't supposed to leave these areas, so this is the chairs, this first chair here.
So environmental services came in and made the
measured everything, and so it's just weird. They don't have the same type of group therapy they had before. And then everyone has to wear a mask, so we don't have the super N95 mask. We have the surgical masks, but so all staff has to wear masks. The patients don't, because it just wouldn't make, it's too, logistics would be too hard to have patients changing masks all the time and stuff like that. So and then even things like lunch. So the cafeteria, there's only like 5 chairs in the cafeteria because they can't, it'd be too close. And so a lot of patients still eat in their room and do stuff like that, which is not really healthy. So you're not getting that interaction, that camaraderie, or even talking to people. You're kind of isolated in your room, which is not very therapeutic. And then we clean everything. Just, even if someone's not sick, the nurses are still cleaning everything. We've run out of the regular wipes, so we're using the nasty bleach wipes to clean everything.
Oof.
Yeah, so it's weird. And I probably wasn't as good as I should have been about washing my hands, but I find out like my hands have gotten all crusty, and I have to really do a lot of lotion at night or my hands dry out. It's just
chapped and
So that's been
no one ever talks about that. You never see that. Because the funny thing is, with me, because I've been forced to work from home, like I'll watch like the Today Show. No one talks about like, this is how you wash your hands, and oh look, it's chapped and everything's gonna bleed, and
So I have cotton gloves that I have been wearing it, and I put lotion on and put them on, and Claire calls them the Michael Jackson gloves because they're white and kind of creepy. So that's what I've been trying to do to keep my hands dry. And home was weird because we only So the first week or so, what would happen is a patient would come over and they'd be like, they have COVID symptoms. And if we're lucky, we can test them because there was nowhere close to enough testing kits. So like,
Oh, no.
yeah. So if we were lucky, we got to test them. If not, they're like, we'll just treat them like they've got COVID because they're not going to get a test. And we're like, excuse me? Yeah. So it was really touch and go and really scary. And we'd have people, we would just discharge
And
people.
let me put you on pause for a minute. Yeah. How old is your daughter?
18 months this month.
Okay.
So.
Just so everyone knows, if some random person watches this, just so you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was weird because you'd be like, okay, this person, like we discharged a couple because they came in, they wanted to detox off of meth or something. And like, oh yeah, we think we've been exposed to COVID, and they had fevers, and they're like, what's your plan? And their plan was to go back on the street and use meth. And so we're like, well, we usually would keep you and try to treatment plan with you and stuff like that, but we just literally like discharged from the day they showed up because it's like, yeah, because we're like, we don't want to expose everybody in the hospital for this. If you had a plan, you want to stay sober, we'd help you, but they didn't want to stay sober. It's like, okay. So that was scary. And then with a couple of people that finally the test we started being able to get to tests and say, okay, we'd order the test, and then the guy from the standalone emergency next door would come over and do the test, but he'd come over in like the alien abduction outfit, with the like
right.
Yeah, the big hat and and so he'd come in like, and it would freak everybody out in the unit because he'd come in and then he'd go into the room with the person and do the test, and like everyone's like, why is the guy in the environmental suit here? Like, oh.
And so for people that don't know, the mental health hospital has its own separate building and separate units. It's right next door to an emergency room. And so that's where the spacemen come from.
Yeah, and they would come over and do the test. We were supposed to be told if anyone tested positive, but I don't know if anyone ever tested positive or not. But
they
now
didn't tell you?
Well, they never. I was going on the no news is good news thing, is what I was going on. So it's like, no one said that Bob was positive or anything like that. So no, we never got any confirmation that anyone was positive or not. And then now what's the plan is we have enough tests. So if someone's in the emergency room and they have symptoms, they're going to test them before they send them to Mountain Crest. And so it's a little bit less stressful because we'll know. And if they have it, we can then isolate them, do all the isolation precautions and stuff like that. So it's not let's touch and go. This person might have a good luck. So luckily I only had like 2 patients during that time when it was like, oh, just good luck with it. And that was pretty scary because you had to gown up and you go and talk to them. And then you're like, I only asked them like 4 questions. Was it really worth me wasting all this time to put on this gown to go ask them like, hey, who's your doctor? Okay, let me go work on that.
What does a gown look like?
So we have these rules that says the CDC, how to put a gown on. So the gown is a paper gown. It goes to your knees basically, and it's sleep. So you put the gown on and you tighten the back. There's 2 ties. Then it's gown, mask, face shield, gloves. And then you're supposed to take it off in reverse order, but that makes no sense because you basically take your gloves off first. But the gown actually just tears off when you're done. So you take the face screen off and you clean it. You leave your mask on, then you pull the gown off and tear the gown off, and then you throw the gloves away with the gown. And you're not supposed to, you're supposed to only touch the inside of the gown. Where in theory, where you're not exposed. Yeah, so it's like a 2-person job because the nurse has to be there with you with the red bag, the biohazard bag. So you take the stuff off and put it in the biohazard bag without touching the nurse, and then run away.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was pretty weird.
Oh.
Yeah. So I only had 1 real patient like that I had to go interact with. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just going to run to the bedroom and take all my clothes off and put them in the, in the dirty clothes without anything, and then wash everything.
But you had to do that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So yeah, it was weird.
All right. So sorry. Just kind of processing that. So thankfully, I think we're probably over the hump, unless if people decide to like bum rush Jared Polis today or tomorrow or Sunday. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's make it a little more happy. So what I'm wondering, especially since you're an essential worker, so you don't get the lovely staying at home order, but you have to stay at home. What have you been watching? What have you been streaming? What have you been reading? What have you been doing?
So it's weird. So I was reading, before this all happened, I was reading this book called Lovecraft County. So Jordan Peele's making a mini series out of it. So it's a really cool book about 1950s Jim Crow era Black people who end up coming across Cthulhu mythos monsters, basically. And so it's like, what's worse, the racism or the monster, basically? and so it was really, but it was way too stressful when this all started happening, because nothing good is in the, all these characters are like, oh, one lady's trying to buy a house and she goes to look at houses and all the white people like treat her like crap,
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, this is just too stressful. So I stopped reading that, and I really haven't been able to find a book that's not stressful.
Okay.
So I've been doing a lot of watching terrible television.
Tell me about terrible television. I love terrible television.
So I took a deep dive, and so it's on Vice. There's a show called Dark Side of the Ring. It's about old pro wrestlers. So it was like the season 2 just started like a month ago, and the first 2 episodes were Chris Benoit, who's the guy who had CTE really bad and killed his wife and then killed himself.
And family.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize he had 3 children. I know he had 2. He killed one of his sons, and his other 2 children were from other marriages, so they were out of the house, freaked out and killed everybody. So it's fascinating to watch that one, because you got to see a different side of things, and a bunch of his friends who were pro wrestlers were talking. They interviewed them, but he got drug into. So one of his best friends was a very Christian sort of guy, and that guy died like 2 years before he killed himself. And so he got all this grief, and he didn't know how to deal with it. And his family wasn't really Christian, but his best friend was a Christian, and gave him a Bible and couldn't do all this stuff. And he didn't have any other Christian people around him. And then his CTE was so bad, like his sister-in-law was like, he's lived in the same town in Georgia for like 5 years, and then he started becoming paranoid and wouldn't go to the same route to the gym to work out. He'd have to go a different route, and people were afraid of people following him, and he wouldn't go the same route to the store. And you're like, and no one thought to get him looked at by a doctor or ask anyone if that was normal. And so all these signs of dementia were showing up that everyone was like, oh, that's kind of weird. He's being weird. Oh, well, let's just keep letting him get hit in the head with a steel chair every night, And so it was neat. So that I've been doing that. And then I'm basically going back to everything I used to like in college. So I'm watching a lot of anime and doing that, which drives Claire crazy, but that's okay.
What anime?
So I started watching Ranma. Did you ever watch Ranma?
I know nothing about anime, but I've learned other people are watching this more than just me. So I think it's important to talk about all the random shit that people watch, because I think this part of the interview is the most important. Like, what makes you happy? What are you watching? What are you doing?
Right. So yeah, it's hard to explain. So Ranma was written by this very famous author from the late 80s, but America didn't find it until like the 90s.
Okay.
So Ranma was the first. So did you have a Super Nintendo growing up?
My wife did. I didn't.
Okay.
I had the Genesis.
You had a Sega Genesis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know, I'm not cool.
Right. Well, the Genesis had some games, but it was not the Super Nintendo. But
to be honest, Trevor, you're the guy that I wanted to be the person that liked me.
Well,
So,
I had a Genesis. It was much later because someone gave it to me, but it was a cool thing. But
no worries.
yeah,
All right, tell me
Ron
about
was
that.
weird because it was the first Super Nintendo game in Japan, and it was the
Oh,
first fighting video game. So we had in the 80s we had fighting video games, but nothing like Ranma, which had 8 characters to choose from, and you chose one of these guys, and they fought. They had different controllers,
right,
different
right.
things on the controller did stuff. So it was the first fighting
Yeah.
game in the late 80s. So when it finally came to America, it was had all of this. It's hard to explain, but all of these things that we had in pop culture were referenced in Ranma because Ranma happened in the late 80s when Japan was obsessed with American pop culture. So it was kind of this feedback loop. It's really weird, but it hasn't aged well. So I mean, it's from the late 80s. So and then we watched in the 90s, but Ranma is basically a show about it's a father and son. The son and father left their mom to travel the country and become super martial artists when he was like 6.
Nice.
And so he traveled the country, and then it's a comedy, but what happened was they were in China training, and they didn't realize the training ground they were at was cursed, and they fell in these springs, and the dad turns into a panda, and Ranma turns into a girl. So whenever they get wet, the dad becomes a panda, and Ranma becomes a girl, and they can change back if they get hot water on them. And then it turns out that, when you were a small child, I made a deal with my best friend that you would marry one of his daughters. So we're going to go to his house in Tokyo. And so they show up, and this guy who becomes a girl every once in a while has to choose one of his 3 daughters to marry. And of course, they all hate each other, and they end up fighting. But there's all these weird things that happen. So all these weird sexist jokes. And of course, the Japanese nudity is just whatever. So this is a kid's show. But Ron was close off all the time. Yeah, so it'd be like the Animaniacs, except Dot her clothes keep falling off, and it's funny. So you're like, no, this is weird. And then one of the main bad guys is this guy who's a pervert who likes to steal girls' underwear. So the opening credits, his name's Happosai, and he shows up in the end, and he's running across the screen. He's carrying this, someone's underwear that he's stolen from the laundry mat, and you're like, okay, that was maybe in college that was funny, but now it's probably not appropriate.
Really, really weird.
yeah, it's very weird.
Well, that's sweet. Not sweet, but sweet. That is the funniest thing I've heard in a long time.
Oh, good.
Have you watched Tiger King?
Oh yeah, everyone in the office watched Tiger King.
Of course. Did Carol feed her husband to?
Oh yeah, totally.
Tiger? Okay.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
That's what I ask everyone.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So far, yeah, like it's 4 for 4. Yeah, everyone thinks so. All right, so we're on number 4. Let's see here. This is my wife's question that she makes me ask everyone. So what is something that people don't know about you or would be surprised about you?
I'm not a shy person, so most people know my crazy shit I've done in my life. I've done like hardcore weird ass crazy shit. So I've had 3 cage fights. I lost all 3 of them, but I've had 3 cage fights. Most people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I thought everyone knew that.
No, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You had cage fights?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what?
Yeah, I just... Yeah, so...
Okay. You have to tell me now.
Okay. So I was a big pro wrestling fan when I was little, of course. When you're little,
I knew you were a big pro wrestling fan.
Right. So as I said, I'm not a shy person about that. So when I was little, everyone thought pro wrestling was real. And I mean, when some guy gets thrown through a table, he's really getting thrown through a table. So it's technically real, but it's predetermined.
Right.
And there's no so I always thought I would do that. I thought I could be a pro wrestler, but I'm 5'4". Most pro wrestlers, take craps that are bigger than I am. That's those guys are 6'6", giant monsters. That's not going to happen. So I don't know if you know, UFC 1 took place in 1994. So the year after I graduated high school, and it was in Denver. So, like in 95 or 96, I found the UFC. So, it was the terrible things you did in college. You found these videotapes that people would trade around and watch it. But they ended up making weight classes and doing all these things. I'm like, I could do that. I just didn't have any opportunity. And then it must have been 2008 or 9. There was a school in town that did MMA stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. So, so I would go do that. They had a cage and everything. And they're finally if you really want to do this, you have to fight. You have to, measure yourself. You have to try. And so they just did. They're called smokers. You just okay. We're gonna have a fight on Friday night. Let's see if anyone wants to fight, and we'll put you together and you'll have a fight. So I did that 3 times. It's very weird.
Back the truck up.
Okay.
What does the fight look like?
So they have a cage. So they had a full cage. And then so literally 2 weeks before, I'd be like, okay, we're gonna have a fight on Friday the 12th or whatever. It'll start at 6. We'll make who wants to fight, and we got 6 or 8 guys together. Everyone was as close to possible as weight classes as they could be, but no, I was always the smallest guy. That's okay. And then they'd actually I have a fight card. I have one that has all our pictures together. A pamphlet. Yeah. And then they said, okay, we're going to have a fight. They bring chairs into the gym, and one was by Halloween, so they had ring girls. That was weird. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I love this. I did not know about this.
Oh, yeah. So it's very weird what your brain does, because basically you're like, okay, I want to do this. I've always wanted to do something like this. I'm going to train for it. And then you only have a couple weeks to train for it, but you're doing all this stuff. And then the day comes and it's like, I think I'm going to shit myself. Just like, I don't know what to do. And so you're just like, okay. And then it's the first one, I was the first fight, because we're like, okay, there's just, the 2 small guys, we'll have them fight first. So never, I've been to fights in Denver and stuff, the amateur fights like that. So I've seen that, but I've never been part of that. I've never been there. So it was it was I don't know how to describe it. Your brain is going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but life is not going that fast. But you can't stop your brain. You're just fuck. And so we're going, and my coach Seb, he's like, okay, we got it already. Got me in the corner, and it's going to sound weird, but you put Vaseline on your eyebrows, because when you're getting punched in the face, your eyebrows will catch it. And that's why guys get cut in the eyebrows in boxing. So you put Vaseline on your eyebrows, and he's sitting there looking at me. He's like, okay, deep breaths, putting Vaseline on my eyebrows. He's like, all right, just don't give up. And my brain went, that's an option? That I could give up? And I'm like, no, you can't. So you had to basically talk your brain into doing this.
Wow.
So it was that first one was weird, because I got a hold of the guy, and I knew I didn't really have him in a choke, but I'm like, my body's like, I'm not letting go, because if you let go, he's going to punch you again. And so I couldn't convince. So everyone's like, you're not in a good position. Your corner's yelling at you, and you're not in a good position, but your brain's like, no, I'm done. I'm not letting go of him, because if I let go of him, even though I could punch him, even though my brain's like, if you let go of him, you could still punch him. It's like, no, I'm not letting him punch me again. And I couldn't convince my brain to do that. And then the second fight was the one that Halloween was. I had a lot more time. I had 3 weeks to prepare for that one. And the guy I was going against, he was shorter than me, which was the only guy I fought that was shorter than me. But he was as wide as he was tall. And everyone's like, he kicks really, really hard. And I'm like, okay, I can handle that. I know what to do if he kicks me really hard. I knew he couldn't kick me in the head. So I'm like, he's not going to knock me out. It's just going to really hurt. And so I trained, okay, if he's going to kick me, I want to exchange a couple times. And if he kicks me, I'm going to take him down, and I'm going to go for a leg lock. And that was my whole plan. So I knew that, even if he kicks me, I don't want to punch him. So we go in, we have a couple exchanges, and I land a couple good punches. and then he kicks me really hard, and I knew it, and I stopped it. But my brain said, okay, take him down now. I'm like, no, we're supposed to exchange more. And so I took him down. And the weird part was my head ran into the cage. So smack, right into the cage. And the ring girls were there, and they were very buxom. And it was Halloween, so they were like, she was like a slutty devil or something like that. And my eyes are literally like, the cage is here, and her boobs are here. So I'm like, wow, tits. You know, your brain just like, and this guy's punching you, and you're like, wow, there's tits right now. And you're like, I've got to figure out how to get away from this. So I got him down, and I'm punching him, and all thing my brain can think is, if you punch too much, you're going to wear yourself out, and he's going to get away. So I'm punching him in the face, and I've got him a mouse over his eye, and I'm punching him, and I'm punching his ribs, and then my brain goes, well, you can't punch him because you're going to get tired. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so I need to figure something else out. And we were in his corner, so his corner guy's sitting right there with him, telling him what to do, and I'm like, oh, he's telling him to do this. And instead of my brain being like, oh, don't let him do that, he totally got me in this. It's an omoplata. It's a really weird shoulder lock, and I couldn't figure out how to get out of it. So I'm like, it's weird. Your brain's like, I know this is supposed to be happening, but I'm just not going to let you do it. And it was the weirdest thing.
Wow. Trevor, I had no idea.
Oh, I thought you knew that. So I thought.
No idea.
Yeah. So that's just one of the weird shit things I've done. So.
That was the most amazing story I've heard in ages.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank God for the pandemic. Wow. When did you stop doing wrestling?
It was probably like 2012, and just no time. You know, it's one of those things that in my mind, if I wanted to do this, I wanted to do it like all out, and I couldn't. You know, I had a life and a wife and a job and all those things, and I couldn't just.
You're the only person in my life that I've ever met that said, yeah, I just didn't have time to do wrestling. Yeah, I'm good.
Well, I don't know if I'm good, but I'm just, you know, I had to make that choice. So.
Trevor, thank you so much. Oh man, that is one of the best stories I have ever heard in my life.
Well, thank you.
Which is terrible because here's the last of the Fiverr. So I call it the Fiverr Plus song because obviously you know as a therapist, we always ask clarifying questions. But how are you, Claire? And I forget your kiddo's name.
Thea.
How are you, Claire, and Thea doing? And how are you taking care of yourselves during all of this stuff?
We're doing all right. We're all super stressed out. Well, Thea's not stressed out because she's 18 months old, but
right, she doesn't know.
Right. So we're doing all right. We really make sure we spend time in the evening doing something mindless. So like taking a bath or watching something stupid on TV or something like that, just because, I mean, Claire's job is not supposed to be 24/7, but it basically is. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, that's the good part about Mountain Crest is once you clock out, you're done because there's other people there in the hospital to deal with it.
Right.
But it still feels like it's 24/7 because you're like
you worry about people.
You know, you worry about people, but any news about something bad happening in the hospital, you're like, fuck, that's going to affect me, you know. So you're like always worried about something on the news coming by and you're like, oh, we're going to have to do this with the hospital, or this is how many dead, or this stuff, you know, because the hospital's all connected. So it's all right. The hard part is I'm not a very good planner for anything. So I don't have like stockpiles of food. So I'm used to like, oh, I'll go home from work and I'll stop and I'll get a 12-pack of pop and ding dongs because we're out. And you can't do that. So like trying to think about planning things and planning meals and thinking ahead is not my strong suit. So that's been the stressful part.
I think that's fairly typical of people that have the same personality as us. Because you and I are fairly similar.
Yeah.
So, aside from the wrestling, because I don't wrestle,
Yeah.
I'm very doughy. So,
That's actually sometimes a plus.
I don't know. I like to cuddle. So,
I like cuddling with punches, so it's about the same.
that's what I kind of think. Like,
Yeah.
hi, my wife.
Yeah.
Hey, my little puppies. So, um, thank you for being part of my grand experiment, Trevor. I appreciate that you were willing to take a chance with this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have no idea if anyone is going to look at this. So it just might be my Facebook friends. Feel free to share it. Anything, I know it's ridiculous, but anything you want to promote?
No, nothing exciting is happening. So
Sweet.
nothing.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank you for doing this. You are a rock star. I've learned so much. So this is episode 4. And I will keep everyone posted if I do any more.
All righty.
Who
Cool.
knows? Sweet. Bye.
Bye.